Robert Sheridan stood in his driveway, staring at the pristine white envelope in his hand as if it contained anthrax rather than HOA letterhead. The Whispering Pines Homeowners Association had a reputation for its strongly worded missives, but this was the first time Robert had been on the receiving end. He'd known the risk when he installed the 12-foot twisting water slide for his backyard pool last weekend, but he hoped flying under the radar might work. It hadn't. Notice of violation, the letter proclaimed in bold typeface that seemed to shout from the page. Robert's eyes scanned the meticulously worded complaint, catching phrases like unapproved structure, visual disturbance to the neighborhood aesthetic, and immediate removal required. The $500 weekly fine would begin accruing in exactly 7 days. "Damn it," he muttered, slapping the letter against his thigh as he trudged up the walkway to his colonial-style home, painted the exact shade of beige approved by the Architectural Review Committee 3 years ago when he and Jenny had moved in. Inside, his 10-year-old twins, Mia and Max, were pressed against the living room window, their faces lighting up at the sight of their father. "Dad, can we swim now? Is the slide ready?" Max called out, already wearing his swim trunks despite the morning hour. Robert forced a smile. "Not just yet, buddy. Maybe we should have breakfast first." Jenny appeared from the kitchen, dish towel in hand, her expression immediately reading his. 12 years of marriage had given her an almost supernatural ability to detect his moves. "They sent the letter, didn't they?" she asked quietly as the kids raced upstairs to grab their goggles. "Yep. 7 days to remove it or face the wrath of Barbara Whitfield and her merry band of suburban tyrants." Robert waved the letter before tossing it onto the counter. Jenny sighed. "I told you we should have submitted the plans first, and wait 6 months for them to deny it anyway." Robert ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "The kids have been begging for that slide for 2 years. You saw Max's face when we surprised them." The memory of last weekend's unveiling was still fresh, the twin shrieks of joy, their endless trips up and down the blue spiral slide, the neighborhood kids lining up for turns. For one glorious weekend, Robert had been the coolest dad on Magnolia Street. "What are we going to tell them?" Jenny asked, nodding toward the ceiling where the twins could be heard rummaging through drawers. Before Robert could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor and longtime friend, Derek Chen. "Heard about the HOA letter. That sucks, man. Barbara's on the warpath lately. First my basketball hoop, now your slide." Robert texted back quickly. "Anyway, go peel." Derek's response came seconds later. "Technically, yes, but she's rejected every appeal this year. Says she's maintaining neighborhood standards." Robert stared out the kitchen window at his backyard oasis. The pool they'd saved 5 years to install was perfect, except for the gleaming blue slide now marked for execution. Something inside him hardened. The slide represented more than just a recreational feature. It was about creating memories for his kids, about being the father who said yes instead of we can't. As he watched a cardinal land on the slide's highest curve, that idea began to form. The HOA rules were specific about unapproved structures, but what about art? The Architectural Review Committee had approved several statues and water features throughout the neighborhood. "I'm not taking it down," he announced, turning to Jenny with a glint in his eyes she recognized all too well. "Robert," she warned. "No, listen. I'm not giving in this time." He pulled out his laptop and opened a browser. "If Barbara Whitfield wants a fight, she's got one." "What are you doing?" Jenny asked, peering over at his shoulder. Robert's fingers flew across the keyboard, searching for decorative pool sculptures and water feature designs. Then he refined his search. Dolphin fountain statues. "I'm finding a loophole," he replied, a slow smile spreading across his face as an image appeared on screen, a magnificent dolphin sculpture arcing over water. "And I think I just found it." As the twins thundered back down the stairs, swim gear in hand, Robert closed the laptop. He wouldn't tell them about the HOA threat, not yet. First, he had a plan to execute, one that would either solve their problem or escalate it beyond belief. Either way, Barbara Whitfield had no idea what was coming. Robert's dining room table had disappeared beneath a sprawl of printouts, sketches, and his laptop displaying various tabs of sculptures, water features, and most crucially, the complete bylaws of the Whispering Pines HOA. 3 days had passed since the violation letter, and he'd spent every spare moment crafting his counterattack. "You realize this is technically insane, right?" Jenny said, placing a mug of coffee beside him. It was nearly midnight, and she was already in her pajamas, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. "Technically insane is exactly where we need to be," Robert replied, not looking up from the HOA covenant he was highlighting. "Look here, Section 12, Paragraph 4, decorative water features and sculptural art pieces not exceeding 8 feet in height are permitted with prior approval provided they maintain the aesthetic harmony of the community." Jenny leaned over his shoulder. And you think they'll approve a dolphin statue that's secretly a water slide? Not secretly, Robert corrected, flipping to another page of notes. It's going to be explicitly a water feature. Water will flow over it. Children will simply happen to follow the same path as the water. That's semantics, and you know it. The HOA lives and dies by semantics, Robert countered, pulling up a digital rendering he commissioned from an artist friend. This is Derek's cousin's work. He does custom pool installations. The 3D model showed a magnificent bronze dolphin arsing gracefully out of the water. Its body formed a smooth curve that began at the pool deck and descended into the deep end. Water cascaded along the dolphin's back, creating what anyone with eyes could see was effectively a slide, but one disguised as a high-end sculptural water feature. How much? Jenny asked, the practical question cutting through Robert's enthusiasm. He winced. $12,000. Robert, that's our vacation fund, I know. He finally looked up at her, the blue glow of the laptop illuminating the determination in his face. But this isn't just about the slide anymore. It's about not letting them dictate every aspect of our lives. Remember when the Johnsons wanted to plant that Japanese maple and Barbara made them remove it because it wasn't on the approved floral list? Jenny sighed, sitting down beside him. I understand the principle, but $12,000 is a lot of money to spend on spite. Not spite. Freedom, Robert insisted. And memories for the kids. Plus, it's actually an investment. Derek says art installations like this can increase property values. Jenny gave him a skeptical look, but he could see her resolve weakening. She'd always been the practical one, but she also hated injustice as much as he did. You've already decided to do this, haven't you? She asked. I submitted the formal request for the art installation this morning, he admitted. Used all their official channels, included the architectural renderings, material specifications, everything by the book. And if they reject it? Robert grinned. That's where phase 2 comes in. The next morning, Robert was enjoying a rare Saturday off work when his phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Barbara just stormed out of her house with your proposal in hand. Headed toward the community center, deaf go on one. Robert had been expecting this. Barbara Whitfield, as HOA president, received copies of all architectural review submissions. He gave it 20 minutes before. The doorbell rang. Max and Mia, watching cartoons in the living room, both jumped up. I'll get it, Robert called, striding to the door with barely contained excitement. Barbara Whitfield stood on his porch, clutching a folder containing his proposal, her pearl necklace seeming to quiver with indignation. At 62, she maintained the posture of the ballet dancer she'd once been and the imperious expression of someone who spent decades getting her way. Mr. Sheridan, she said crisply, I think we need to discuss your art proposal. Barbara, what a surprise, Robert replied, feigning innocence. Would you like to come in? Jenny just made lemonade. This isn't a social call. She thrust the folder toward him. This proposal is clearly an attempt to circumvent the HOA's decision regarding your unauthorized pool slide. Robert maintained his composure. I'm not sure what you mean. This is a sculptural water feature explicitly permitted under Section 12 of the covenant. It's under 8 feet tall and made of materials consistent with other approved installations in the neighborhood. Barbara's eyes narrowed. It's a slide shaped like a dolphin. It's a dolphin sculpture that water happens to flow over, Robert corrected. Many residents have water features. The Andersons have that 3-tier fountain, and the Williamses installed that modernist waterfall last year. Those don't function as recreational equipment. Neither does this, Robert lied smoothly. It's an artistic representation of marine life that celebrates the beauty of aquatic movement. But water flow is merely aesthetic. Barbara's lips pressed into a thin line. The committee meets Tuesday. I wouldn't get your hopes up, Mr. Sheridan. As she turned to leave, she added over her shoulder, and don't think about installing anything before approval. I'll be watching. Robert closed the door, feeling a rush of adrenaline. Phase 1 was complete, forcing Barbara to handle his request through proper channels rather than summary rejection. Now for Phase 2. He returned to the dining room and picked up his phone, dialing a number he'd saved days ago. Hello, Coastal Dreams, Custom Pools, and Sculptures. This is Robert Sheridan. I'd like to schedule that installation we discussed. Yes, for this Tuesday evening. 8 p.m. would be perfect. Hanging up, he caught Jenny watching him from the doorway, concern etched on her face. You're really doing this, she said. It wasn't a question. They can't reject what's already installed, Robert replied, his voice steady with conviction. And once it's in, removing it becomes a whole different legal battle, one that involves property rights and due process. You've thought this through. Every angle. He showed her a letter he drafted, including having my cousin who practices HOA law ready to respond when they inevitably flip out. Jenny shook her head, but there was the faintest smile playing at her lips. The twins are going to lose their minds when they see it. That, Robert said, pulling her into a hug, is exactly the point. Tuesday evening arrived with an electric anticipation humming through the Sheridan household. Robert had taken extraordinary measures to keep the installation a secret, even going so far as sending the twins to his mother-in-law's for the night, a rare weeknight sleepover that had them bouncing with excitement. "Text me when the truck arrives," Jenny whispered as she backed her minivan out of the driveway. "I'll start bringing the kids home tomorrow until you give the all clear." Robert nodded, giving a thumbs up as he watched them drive away. The sky was darkening to twilight, perfect for his clandestine operation. Derek had agreed to be his lookout, positioned strategically on his deck with a beer and what appeared to be a casual barbecue, though the grill remained unlit. At precisely 7:42 p.m., a nondescript white truck turned onto Magnolia Street. No company logo, no indication of its purpose, exactly as Robert had requested and paid extra for. His phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Incoming. Barbara's watching Wheel of Fortune. All clear." The truck backed into Robert's driveway with practiced precision. Two men in plain clothes stepped out, nodding professionally to Robert. "Mr. Sheridan?" the taller one asked quietly. "That's me," Robert confirmed, leading them through the side gate to the backyard. "I'm Marco. This is Javier. We spoke on the phone," the man said. "We've got the piece pre-assembled as requested. Should take about 3 hours for installation. We'll need to drain about a foot of water from the pool." "Already done," Robert said, gesturing to the pool, where the water level was noticeably lower. "I've got the electrical hookup ready for the water pump, too." Marco nodded approvingly. "You came prepared. This isn't your first rodeo with an HOA, is it?" "First time fighting back," Robert admitted, "but I've been watching them operate for years." The men worked with quiet efficiency. The truck's rear door opened to reveal the bronze Dolphin, its metallic surface gleaming even in the dim light of dusk. A small crane attachment on the truck lifted the sculpture, which was more magnificent in person than in the renderings. The Dolphin's body curved in a perfect arc, its snout pointed skyward before dipping down in a smooth slope that would deposit swimmers right into the deep end. "It's beautiful," Robert whispered, almost forgetting the sculpture's true purpose for a moment. "Castillo brothers do good work," Marco replied, guiding the Dolphin into position. "They're artists first, engineers second. That's why these installations hold up to scrutiny." The next 3 hours were a blur of technical adjustments, concrete anchoring, and plumbing connections to create the waterfall effect that would sluice down the Dolphin's back. Solar-powered LED lights were embedded in strategic locations, illuminating the Dolphin from within and creating an ethereal blue glow that reflected off the pool water. At 10:37 p.m., Marco flipped a switch and water began coursing down the Dolphin's sleek form, cascading into the pool with a soothing, gentle splash. "Moment of truth," Javier said, pulling out a small rubber test dummy the size of a child's torso. He placed it at the top of the Dolphin's back, and they all watched as it glided smoothly down the curve and splashed into the deep end. "Perfect trajectory," Marco declared. "Safe entry angle, good depth. Your kids are going to love this." Robert couldn't help the grin that spread across his face, and it's completely to code. Water feature, art installation, not technically a slide. "According to pool and building codes, yes," Marco confirmed. "It's a decorative water feature with interactive elements. The surface is non-slip marine-grade material, the water flow is adjustable, and all edges are rounded for safety. We've installed similar pieces in 3 other HOA communities, and they held up to challenges." Marco smiled knowingly. 2 did. One still in litigation, but that was in a much stricter community than this. After signing off on the work and watching the truck depart as discreetly as it had arrived, Robert stood alone in his backyard, admiring the glowing Dolphin sculpture. In the darkness, with the water flowing over its curved back and the lights creating dancing patterns on the pool surface, it really did look like art, expensive, tasteful art that just happened to offer the exact same function as the band's slide. He sent a quick text to Jenny. "Mission accomplished. It's perfect." Her response came seconds later. "Any signs of Barbara?" "None. Derek says her lights went out at 10. We're clear until morning." Robert was securing the gate when his phone buzzed again. This time it was Derek. "Dude, it looks amazing from my yard. Total resort vibes. The whole neighborhood's going to be talking about this tomorrow." That was exactly what Robert was counting on. Public opinion could be a powerful tool against even the most determined HOA president. Once the neighbors saw the Dolphin, many would want similar features for their own pools. Barbara would find herself fighting a trend, not just one homeowner. He slept little that night, waking at dawn to make a final inspection in the morning light. The Dolphin was even more impressive by day, the bronze casting catching the sunlight, but water creating a rainbow effect as it cascaded down. Robert's phone started buzzing with texts at 6:47 a.m. "Derek, Barbara just stepped out for her morning power walk. She's heading your way. Robert positioned himself casually by his pool, coffee mug in hand as if enjoying a peaceful morning moment. He didn't have to wait long. Sheridan. A shout came from beyond his fence, followed by the frantic clicking of the gate latch. Barbara Whitfield stood frozen at the entrance to his backyard, her power-walking outfit, matching purple tracksuit and visored cap, almost comical against her expression of absolute shock. "Good morning, Barbara," Robert called cheerfully. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "What is that?" she demanded, pointing a trembling finger at the Dolphin. "That's Oceanic Joy," Robert replied, using the official name he'd given the sculpture in his proposal. "Lovely, isn't it? Really ties the backyard together." You installed this without approval." Barbara's face was turning an alarming shade of crimson. "The committee meeting is this afternoon." Robert took a calm sip of coffee. "Oh, I must have misunderstood the process. I thought the meeting was for objections, not approvals. The covenant says that water features under 8 feet tall are permitted. It doesn't explicitly state pre-approval is required." It was a lie, and they both knew it, but Robert had calculated this move carefully. The HOA would need to go through formal channels to force removal, channels that would take weeks, possibly months. Barbara was nearly speechless with rage. This is clearly intended to circumvent. "It's art, Barbara," Robert interrupted smoothly. "Functional art, like those musical swings downtown or the interactive fountain at the city center. The twins are taking an interest in marine conservation, so we wanted something educational as well as beautiful." As if on cue, a small crowd had begun to gather at the gate, neighbors drawn by Barbara's shouts. Robert could see their expressions shift from curiosity to admiration as they took in the Dolphin. "That's gorgeous, Robert," called Linda Parker from 2 doors down. "Where did you get it?" "Is it custom?" asked Mike Williams, who'd recently installed the modernist waterfall Barbara had grudgingly approved. The tide of public opinion was already turning, exactly as Robert had planned. He smiled at Barbara, whose lips were pressed together so tightly they'd nearly disappeared. "The committee will be hearing about this," she hissed, before turning and marching away through the growing crowd of admiring neighbors. Looking forward to it, Robert called after her, raising his coffee mug in a toast. His phone buzzed with a text from Jenny. "Coast clear to bring kids home." Robert looked at the gleaming Dolphin, the gathering neighbors, and the retreating form of Barbara Whitfield. "Bring them home," he texted back. "The show is just beginning." By 3 o'clock that afternoon, the Sheridan backyard had become something of a neighborhood attraction. Word had spread rapidly through Whispering Pines about the magnificent Dolphin sculpture, and a steady stream of neighbors had been finding excuses to walk past their fence. Some were bold enough to request a closer look, which Robert happily accommodated. Mia and Max had returned home to find their new aquatic friend, and their reaction had exceeded even Robert's expectations. After an initial moment of shocked silence, they'd erupted into cheers that could probably be heard 3 streets over. "It's better than the slide," Max had declared after his 5th trip down the Dolphin's sleek back. "It's like riding an actual dolphin," Mia had added, her hair dripping as she climbed out of the pool for another go. Jenny, despite her initial reservations, couldn't help smiling at their joy. "I have to admit," she whispered to Robert as they watched the twins play, "seeing their faces makes it worth every penny." Now, as the hour of the HOA committee meeting approached, Robert stood in his closet debating what to wear. He'd taken the afternoon off work specifically for this showdown. "The navy blazer," Jenny suggested from the doorway. "It makes you look respectable, but not like you're trying too hard." Robert nodded, pulling it from the hanger. "Lawyer adjacent, not full lawyer." "Exactly." His phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Committee room is packed. Barbara's called in reinforcements. The Johnsons, the Millers, and old man Peterson are all here backing her up." Robert wasn't surprised. Barbara had her loyal faction within the community, mostly older residents who shared her vision of a pristine, controlled neighborhood environment. "How many on our side?" he texted back. "At least a dozen neighbors. Linda's here with pictures of your Dolphin to show everyone." Mike brought blueprints for a similar installation he wants to propose. Robert grinned. Phase 3 was already in motion. Community momentum. When Robert and Jenny arrived at the Whispering Pines Community Center, the small meeting room was indeed standing room only. Barbara sat at the head of the conference table, flanked by the 4 other committee members. Her expression was stone cold, but Robert could detect the faintest tremor in her hand as she shuffled papers. "Let's call this meeting to order," Barbara announced, tapping her gavel with unnecessary force. "We have a single agenda item today, the unauthorized installation at 347 Magnolia Street." "Point of order," called a voice from the back. It was Stan Morris, a retired attorney who'd moved to the community last year. "I believe the agenda should reflect the actual item under discussion. Whether the water feature installed at the Sheridan residence is in compliance with HOA covenants." Several neighbors murmured in agreement. Barbara's jaw tightened visibly. Fine, she conceded. The agenda item is determination of covenant compliance regarding the water feature installed without prior approval at 347 Magnolia Street. Robert kept his expression neutral, though internally he was celebrating. Stan's intervention had already framed the debate around compliance, not authorization, exactly where Robert wanted it. Mr. Sheridan, Barbara continued, would you care to explain why you installed this structure without committee approval? Robert stood buttoning his blazer. Thank you, Madam President. I'd first like to clarify that Oceanic Joy is not a structure but an artistic water feature comparable to others already approved in our community. He pulled out his copy of the HOA covenant. Section 12, paragraph 4 permits decorative water features not exceeding 8 feet in height, which mine clearly does not. It's a slide shaped like a dolphin, Barbara countered, her voice tight. It's a sculptural representation of marine wildlife that incorporates flowing water, Robert corrected smoothly. Created by the renowned Castillo brothers, whose work appears in public spaces and upscale communities throughout the state. Linda Parker raised her hand from the audience. I'd like to share these photos I took this morning. She passed around her phone showing the dolphin from various angles. I think we can all agree it's a beautiful addition to the neighborhood. The aesthetic quality isn't the issue, Barbara insisted. The issue is that it functions as recreational equipment, which requires different approval processes. Barbara, Mike Williams interjected, my waterfall has a sitting ledge behind it where my kids play. Is that now in violation because they interact with it? Murmurs rippled through the room. Robert could see the committee members exchanging uncertain glances. That's different, Barbara insisted. How exactly? Robert asked, seizing the moment. Because children enjoy it? I was unaware that Joy was against community guidelines. Laughter erupted from several corners of the room. Barbara's face flushed crimson. Tom Gardner, the committee's youngest member, cleared his throat. I've reviewed the covenant pretty thoroughly, and there's nothing that specifically prohibits water features from being interactive. It's clearly an attempt to circumvent the committee's decision on the slide, Barbara argued, turning to the other committee members. We can't allow homeowners to exploit technicalities to undermine our authority. There was the real issue. Robert had been waiting for Barbara to reveal her true concern. Authority, not aesthetics or property values. Stan Morris spoke up again from the back. Actually, I've prepared a brief legal analysis of this situation. He distributed printed documents to the committee. If the HOA were to demand removal of an installation that technically complies with the covenant as written, it could constitute selective enforcement, which courts have consistently ruled against in HOA disputes. Barbara scanned the document, her expression darkening. This is intimidation. This is information, Stan corrected. As a resident and attorney, I'm simply providing context for the committee's deliberation. Robert hadn't planned on Stan's intervention, but he certainly wasn't going to refuse the assist. The retired lawyer had apparently decided this was an interesting hobby case. After 30 minutes of heated debate, Tom Gardner proposed a compromise. The water feature can remain conditionally approved pending a 6-month review of safety and maintenance. Additionally, the Architectural Review Committee will draft more specific guidelines regarding interactive water features for future installations. The vote was 3-2 in favor, with Barbara and her closest ally, Meredith Peterson, dissenting. As the meeting adjourned, neighbors clustered around Robert and Jenny, offering congratulations and requesting the contact information for the Castillo brothers. Barbara swept past them without a word, her posture rigid with defeat. Outside in the parking lot, Stan approached Robert with a knowing smile. Nice strategy, son. I've been waiting for someone to stand up to Barbara since I moved in. That dolphin of yours is just the beginning. What do you mean? Robert asked. Community dynamics, Stan replied, gesturing to where Mike Williams and 3 other homeowners were huddled, excitedly comparing notes. You've shown it can be done. The covenant has always had loopholes. Barbara just intimidated everyone too much to use them, until now. On the drive home, Jenny squeezed Robert's hand. You know this isn't over, right? Barbara's not the type to accept defeat gracefully. Robert nodded, thinking of the rigid set of Barbara's shoulders as she left the meeting. I know, but neither am I. As they pulled into their driveway, they could hear splashing and laughter from the backyard. The twins had convinced Derek's children to join them for an afternoon swim. And that, Robert said, gesturing toward the joyful sounds, makes it all worth it. What they didn't notice was Barbara Whitfield's car parked discreetly down the street, or Barbara herself taking photographs with a telephoto lens, her expression calculating as she documented every child sliding down the Dolphin's sleek back. The battle for Oceanic Joy had been won, but the war for Whispering Pines was just beginning.